So let's get underway. We're going to start off today's lesson talking about AP style and some common writing errors. Now, some of this may seem a little bit rudimentary. Some of this may take you back to 7th grade or maybe even earlier. But as adults, we tend to get into bad habits, and we get sloppy, and we get careless, and sometimes we just forget. So let's start with the rules. AP style is not always so easy. Some of it doesn't make sense, but it is the style that journalists and public relations professionals use. So let's take a look at AP style and some of the other styles that are out there. Right now we're focusing on AP, but as you can see from the first slide, we've got a lot of other different styles out there. Oxford style, the Chicago style are pretty standard. Then there are particular styles for different types of professions. So as you can see, social sciences, physical sciences, chemistry, medicine, they all have their own styles of language that they use in their printed material. But we're going to use Associated Press. So let's get started with that. Numbers. Numbers are interesting because we tend to put numbers or numerals to everything, but we shouldn't. Numbers less than 10 are written as words. So you're supposed to use numerals for numbers that are over 10. So here's an example. There are 14 students in these two classes. Our tendency would be to use the number 2 where it says 2 classes, but we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to say that anything less than 10 is a word. There are 14 students in these two classes. Only 7, again, under 10, there are only 7 students out of 68 have registered. So there's your example. There are exceptions to this rule, and of course that's part of the frustration of using AP style. There's exceptions to everything. So here's a couple of exceptions to remember. You want to spell out the numbers 1 through 9 except for most dates, times, ages, or money. So for all other numbers, you're using numerals, 9, 57, 232, as you can see. But here's an example. More than 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago, now here we're using 100 written out. 250 young men fought a battle over land worth less than $8 an acre. And that's what I want to focus on, the $8 an acre. Normally you would write out the word 8 as a word. But here, because we're talking about dollars and we're putting it next to a dollar sign, you're saying $8 with the numeral. It was June 2nd, 1902. Only 3 of these men were more than 19 years old. So again, it is dates, times, ages, or money where we're generally going to be using the numeral. Also, never begin a sentence with a numeral. The right way to say 18 cats, you've got to write it out. 18 cats were found in the home. It's wrong if you put the number 18 at the beginning of the sentence. It's just simply the wrong way to do it. So always start a sentence with a word version of the numeral. Now on quotes, this is where people mess up a lot. We tend to use single quotes when we shouldn't be using single quotes. We should be using double quotes. And we use double quotes almost all the time. Here's the exception. You use the double quotation marks when you're quoting someone. But you're only using single quotation marks when there's a quote within a quote. So here's a simple sentence as an example. It's easy to buy clothes online. You're using double quotes. You're also putting that comma inside the quote. We'll talk about that later. So it's easy to buy clothes online, Brianna said. But now I'm going to quote Brianna within somebody else's quote. I'm going to say, Danielle exclaimed, comma, double quote, I heard Brianna say, comma, single quote, it's easy to buy clothes online, comma, single quote, but I don't agree, period, double quote. The quote within the quote is a single quote. The quotes outside are double quotes. Now we're going to be talking about works, things like books and movies and titles of shows and plays. AP has a very specific way of doing this, and the fact is we see it all different ways when we see things in print. But let's see what AP says. AP is telling us that books, films, shows, and other compositions, titles of compositions, are usually surrounded by quotation marks. So for example, the TV show The Office, the movie Parasite, the book Tale of Two Cities. These are long works. These are in quotes. Now, print publications are usually placed in italics instead of quotes. So for example, if you're talking about People magazine or the New York Times or Vogue, you're going to put it in italics. That's AP's rules, not my rules, folks. It is AP's rules, and it's frustrating because you're going to see it all different ways. But if you want to do it right, according to AP style, this is the way to do it. Now, in most cases when we're using dates, we want to spell out the name of the month or the day. You tend to abbreviate, we all tend to abbreviate, but if you're using this in a business letter or in a press release or some kind of a fact sheet, you want to spell it out. So say Tuesday, January 5, and you're not using the TH, ND, ST, or RD after the numeral. Well, why? Because we tend to say January 5th, so why wouldn't we say 5TH? Because when you're writing it out, there's no need for it. It's redundant, it's unnecessary, it just adds space, and sometimes it screws up your spacing. So just say Tuesday, January 5. Okay, moving on to the next slide. We're going to talk about people's titles. And this is another one where you're going to see all kinds of wrong whenever you're looking at resumes or lower third fonts on TV shows, etc. We're going to talk about how you do titles according to AP. A person's job title is capitalized only when it immediately precedes the name. If the title follows the name, it is always lowercase. So here are 3 examples. Executive producer Oprah Winfrey. That's capitalized. Executive producer is in uppercase, the E and the P. But if it follows her name, Oprah Winfrey, executive producer, it is written in lowercase. Same thing with Chairman Bill Gates. Uppercase before the name, lowercase after the name. Professor Jeff Morisoff. Uppercase before the name, Jeff Morisoff Professor, lowercase p after the name. I'm not quite sure why I see students do this, but I see them writing letters or cover letters using first and last names. So they might say, Dear John Smith, comma, and then they go into the letter. Why first and last name? I don't know. It's never done that way. It shouldn't be done that way. What you really should be doing is the AP style way of salutation. So let's look at the slide. When you're writing a letter, you want to follow dear with the person's first name, but only if you are familiar with the person to whom you are writing. If you don't know that person, follow dear with Mr. Smith or Ms. Smith. Don't say Dear John or Dear Joan if you don't know them. It's just considered more formal to do with the last name, but at the same time, people like formality, especially old guys like me. In both cases, follow the salutation with either a comma or a colon. Both are correct. If there's a title you can use, the salutation should then read, Dear Professor Smith, comma, or Dear Commissioner Smith, colon. Okay, so you can do it either way. Either way is correct according to AP. Okay, so that's enough about AP right now. Let's go to our next lesson.